Welcome back to the Berg podcast. Thanks for joining us today. With me today is Dan.
Hey, everybody.
And Ford.
Hey, how's it going?
And today we're talking about, we're still talking about the book. Still talking about Right Away and All at Once. And we're talking about the next chapter, which is the flip, the opposite of the chapter we discussed most recently. So this chapter is about thinking money out, not money in. But it is, again, kind of reverting back to the personal life, right? The personal situation as opposed to the business situation. And Dane, you brought it up a little bit in the last podcast, kind of the correlations between the two. But sort of kind of taking a step away and saying, you know, if everything went right in the business world and we generated enough for you to live comfortably, then what? What happens? So
right, yeah, and it's, you know, I don't think I necessarily do the best job at this. I think you do a better job, and I think Ford does a better job than I do. And I do it with involvement and with engagement and helping and everything else. But it's just sort of my upbringing. You know what I mean? I don't. New Jersey, they don't give as quite as generously as they give out here in Lancaster County. So I'm more careful with what I do. But it's been interesting for me to watch, even without the book, how you and Ford and some of our team members interact with with their surroundings, with the people and their town and their community. You know, and JD comes to mind. You know what I mean? There's Justin. There's some of these guys that I feel like really are very engaged and involved. And the irony of the two chapters back to back for me is, on one we're saying money in, and the other then we're saying money out. We just turn around and spin it back out. But you had brought up with Ramsey about if you, I'm not even going to try the quote. What's the quote with Ramsey?
He likes to say, if you live like no other, you can give like no other.
Right. So, you know, sort of that idea that if you can live your life in a reasonable way with your spending and manage everything, but also be successful, you know, have a good career, then you can put yourself in a position where you can help and you can be impactful. And part of that is all the time, and part of it is timing. You know, that you reach some certain point in your life, in your travels, in your journey with family and kids and everything else. And I hope that I get to that point. You know, I mean, it's certainly, I'm working to that point. And Aaron and I talk about it. But you know, I think you and Ford are definitely more qualified to speak on this than I am in terms of your involvement with the community. I mean, you give just countless hours volunteering. And is it still volunteering if you have a job but you just don't get paid? That's still just volunteering. It's not, normally volunteering means that I volunteer to do something. It doesn't mean I take a job but don't get paid.
I think it's still volunteering.
Still volunteering. Sure. All right. Yeah. So you volunteer and also make contributions. Ford is very engaged in the community in a number of different ways. So yeah. I wondered how the chapter would read to you guys.
Well, I found three major points that were interesting that kind of take it and make it more universal. Mm-hmm. One was that, you know, no matter if you're making minimum wage or you're an executive, based on the world data, we're all in a good spot.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting too. I mean, it is
just give a different perspective on it.
It's easy to lose sight of that at times, you know, like if you're making more than $3 an hour, which is fair to say most of us are, right? You're doing better than 50% of the world's population, right? That was like 2015 data or something like that, but still.
I don't want to take us off the rails right away, but so in the book, I have a little bit of a problem with that thinking. In other conversations we have, I think it's how the government cleverly manipulates the inflation numbers.
Sure.
Right? Is if you can do anything with data if you just
what are you looking for?
What are you looking for with the data? So part of the thing I think always has to be considered when we say that. First, I want to say, like, I subscribe to that. I am fortunate to have been born in the United States.
Sure.
And it makes me more fortunate than many people all over the world. But having said that, we have certain inflated costs in the United States because of how our system runs. And so we pay more for a lot of things than a lot of other people do, you know, whether it be healthcare or any version of insurance. And then also some other items that do skew those numbers a little bit, but it doesn't skew it to say, like, clearly not everyone, the majority of people in the United States are better off than everybody in third world countries that don't even have water. Like, I'm not making that argument,
Sure.
but I'm just saying it's not as, when they start to talk dollars, I always feel like it's a little bit manipulated because it costs so much just to exist in the United States.
I don't subscribe to the, like, we're wealthy, quote unquote,
Right.
compared to the rest of the world. I know, like, if you were to say, like, hey, I make $15, $20 an hour and he's making $3 an hour, that makes me wealthy. But I don't necessarily, because I agree.
Right.
I think that, like, circumstantially, what the $15 an hour can buy you, what the $20 an hour can buy you,
Right.
compared to what the $3 an hour can buy you, are probably comparable,
Yep.
right? I think that, you know, it may be
When you align poverty lines.
yes,
The poverty line is
yeah.
much higher in the United States than it is in other places.
For sure. But I do understand, like, the idea that, like, you know, we by and large are more well off.
Yes. Agreed.
And most of it, I shouldn't say most of it, a big chunk of it has to do with, like, how you decide to manage what you have.
Yes.
Whether it's a lot or a little.
Right. And that is the main driver that's against this chapter is consumerism.
Yes.
Right. It's like our desire to have new things, and, you know, you with the cell phone, not that you have a new cell phone, that you don't, you know, but your choices you make for how your money is spent. You know, and it goes back to the fortress balance sheet and all the other things we talked about before, both on the professional and on the personal side of the book, where if you're spending money faster than you're making it, then there's no way you can help anyone else in any way. You can't even really help yourself. You need someone to help you.
Sure. Yeah.
You know, and so I think this chapter really is like in the if then statement, it's the then, right?
Yeah.
It's, you know, if you can do these things, then you'll be able to be impactful in your community and help. And that makes you feel good, and it's beneficial, and you get to be the part of the solution.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What were the other two things?
The second thing was that he took religion out of it.
Yeah.
Which was kind of nice.
I like that he did it for every religion.
Right.
Like,
like basically just said it's a general thing. It's not like, I mean, this area is, you know, maybe more religious than others, grew up in, you know, that type of thing. And he explains that to himself, but he basically showed that literally, you know, he went through every possible religion. He went through even atheist, and he said that, like, they all have the central core value of, you know, giving and taking care of people. So that was really, you know, because that's usually a lot of the conversation is like, oh, you know, it's the legalistic, you got to give your 10% if the church or whatever the scenario is. And then I think the third thing that was really interesting is that, you know, dollars do make up a part of this, but a lot of, like, time, like, you know, time is money. I mean, we can all say that that's relative, but your time can be just as valuable as the dollars. And so you might not have, you know, money to give to an organization, but maybe you can donate some time, and you're still giving and helping the community, but it doesn't have to be writing checks. So I think that was like I mean, I know it says money out, but part of, like, his conversation was just tied more to the time, or being on a board, or volunteering, as, you know, your sports job is, but whatever. Like, but he was kind of calling out that it's not. He really kind of took away, you know, I was raised in a way where it was like, you know, 10% off the top, then everything, like, which is fine. But he was kind of saying that, like, it's not just, okay, I wrote my, and then he was kind of saying about being a cheerful giver. It's not like, okay, yep, I wrote my check, I'm good to go. It's more like, hey, this is about, like, what can you do, and what can you know, maybe it's time, maybe it's a check, maybe it's talking to somebody.
Right. I mean, when he does that, it becomes so much more inclusive. Because you're making it that everybody is involved, but you're also making it anybody can do it. There's nothing, and I think, Brian, I think you and I had a conversation after I'd read this chapter a little while ago, and there was a car broken down in the middle of the road. And I said to Brian, I was like, I drove past, I had the girls with me, I was late for soccer, I'm trying to get to practice, Erin's with me, and I drove by and I was really disgusted with myself, because it was like two, what I deemed younger girls, like broken down in the middle of Marshallton Thorndale Road by, like, the Wawa. And And I said, Aaron, like, I should have just pulled over and helped them push the car off the road. And Aaron was like, no, you should have called the police so someone could help them. And I was like, no, that's the problem. Like the problem is if everybody just stops and helps them get out of the way, there's not even the risk of getting hit by a car because everyone would stop. And I was like, and when you get out to Lancaster County, there's more of that. I'm not saying it is all that, but there's more of that general feel of like the greater good and helping in the community. And it really struck me, like that struck a chord with me. And I started to think about it and had heard people say, like, we appreciate that your family gives of their gifts, you know what I mean? Because like Aaron will be very engaged and volunteer and I help with things. And you and I talked about that because of you're a good role model that way, for everybody, but in the community with what you volunteer doing.
Yeah. I liked the section where he talked about time, talent. It was a money, time, talent, or what was it? It was three things, right?
Yeah.
But the emphasis there,
your expertise, whatever it is.
Yeah. Like, and just like you're saying there, Dan, he's trying to correlate it to like everyone has something to offer. If you have anything of abundance, then you have something to give, right?
Right.
Potentially. And finances is an example, but your time and your talent are equally as valuable, maybe more valuable to other people. If they need some physical assistance or they need some of your time, the dollars may not have afforded them that regardless, potentially. And I think it does make it a lot more inclusive, and it does make it a lot more like broad and easier to consider and think about. He used the phrase, he used it before in the book, but he used the phrase like tickled tither.
Yeah.
And the other one was like a fretful giver or something like that.
Yeah.
And the idea of like doing something out of obligation doesn't necessarily create the genuine value. You say, well,
it doesn't create the value for you.
Yes. Yeah.
I think that was internally facing.
Yes.
I mean, not that it probably would be a little better for the receiver, but I think it was really focused on the giver. You know what I mean?
Sure.
On you giving, that in giving that way, it's more meaningful. Because that was also the single most impactful part of that chapter to me. And again, I believe it's in this chapter, is when he was quoting various old sources when he was establishing that every religion, every version of belief had some version of helping and generosity. Mm-hmm. And I forget what he quoted, but it was someone that said, how much is giving is enough. And it's enough giving when it impacts you or it hurts you. Or I forget what the exact adjective was.
That was at the end when he said about like a money fast. He was like kind of tied to that.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
right. And it
you
got to
make it hurt you type
part.
deal. And I was like, that's never seen it go to that level. That's interesting.
But I think you do. Like, I'm not saying you give to the level that hurts, but what I am saying is, in one of the things I tie it to is when I agree to help out and coach some of like the youth programs.
Sure.
I don't have the time to do it. Like between work and our schedule, and I do not have, it impacts me. Like it messes with things. I'm late where I'm supposed to be. I don't get to do what I want to do. I have to eat dinner in the car. Like it's impactful. And I think about you that way. You know what I mean? That like, I try and talk to you and I'm like, hey, can we talk later tonight? And you're like, yeah, we can talk at like 9:30 when I get out of practice or my board meeting and head home. You know what I mean? I'm like, Brian left his house at like 6:00 this morning. He's not going to be home till 9:00 at night. And you only got paid to work for 8 or 10 hours in the middle of the day. Like the rest of the time you were giving of yourself, and that has to have an impact. But in being genuinely giving and generous, I don't think you see it that way. Like, I don't think you think like, this is really impacting me. Like this is hurtful to me. Right. But if you think about it, like, it is, because like, what would you get to do with Allie or Addie or Gavin or Aiden? You know what I mean? If you had that time, and I'm not talking about this week, I'm talking about historically. Like if you were the dad that just drops his kid off at lacrosse practice and then just goes about your way, you could have had, a cup of, could have had a milkshake with Addie once a week for her entire life. Instead, you coached lacrosse. You gave, and it did impact you, but you didn't even notice because you genuinely were just trying to be generous and a good member of community. So I think that was the part that was most impactful to me, is think of all the people who give happily and you don't even notice it. You sort of just take it that it's like their job, but it's not their job.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I think that I think it's interesting sometimes too, when you see people in those positions, right? So, and this is not like altruistic really in any way, but like, I think many people believe that if you're doing something, you've got to be getting compensated for it, right?
There's some benefit to you.
Yeah, right. So like, I can't tell you the number of times I've been emailed as a board member with a complaint about the way something's happening. And they're like, and you're overpaid. And I'm like, yes, maybe at $0, I may be overpaid. I probably not overvalued, but I maybe in your opinion, I'm not satisfying the obligation of the job. So maybe I'm overpaid at $0. And it's just sort of like, I think the expectation by most people is like, well, you show up to that thing every week. They've got to be paying you to do it. And it's like, no, actually, I want to do it. I get satisfaction out of knowing that I can do it. I believe I have the ability and the skill set needed in the role at the moment. And so like that's how I give my time. But yeah, that part did jump out to me a lot though. It's a conversation that I've had in various forms and fashion over a number of years. You know, our family goes to church. I do believe in giving back to the church and the church community. But I've always struggled when I come across a pastor who has that like, show me your checkbook and I'll show you what you care about mentality, right? And what he's really saying is like, did you write more money to the things you enjoy doing versus to the church or something of that nature? And I'm like, man, I think that's what scares people away from the idea of whatever the venue is, like of doing something good, of being generous, of giving, because they don't want to be judged for whether or not it was perceived to have been enough, whether or not it was perceived to have been of value, you know, all of those things. Because like when you come to it from a point of judgment and you say like, oh, well, I know Dan could have written a check for $1,000 instead of $100. Like I know, they drive a nice car or what. They have no
Whatever
idea
their evaluation is.
What your budget looks like. Well, you know, like
none of the things,
no context, no perspective.
Yeah.
But I think that scares a lot of people off from being a participant in giving of their time, talent, finances, because there's like a judgment component to it too, to say like, why didn't you do more? Why couldn't you?
Yeah.
So is that weird to think about? Because
it makes a lot of sense. And you triggered something to me that I'm being very intentional to try and stay in a narrow path here. But growing up Catholic, I have so much baggage that we don't have enough podcast time to really discuss.
Welcome to the couch.
What growing up Catholic is like. But so many things struck me. Like one of them was I was taken back as a kid that when you had to do the tithing thing, right? And I remember as a kid that my dad worked a lot, and we would. Once I was old enough, I would ride my bike to church, and I would take my siblings, and we'd look like a row of ducks that I'd like funnel them to church on our bike, and they'd give us like money to put in the offering, and I remember that we would get envelopes, and the envelopes were like numbered to you, right? And I like for me personally, like spiritually, I don't think there's anything that can say that your church is not right more than that. Like I just struggle with like, if you need to have an accounting status so you can be certain that I gave some predetermined amount that you think I should give based on information, because my parents explained to me, it was like, well, like you would say like, you know, I make X amount of dollars. So then they can account for that into their budget. And it was, even now as an adult, it seems like the craziest thing in the world, especially in Catholicism. And as I got older, I really struggled with it because of all the issues Catholicism has. And I was like, okay, well, who's paying that settlement? You know, who's paying for that cost? Like, I mean, we all know who's paying for it. You know, it's much like the government. Anytime they write a check to somebody, you're paid for it. And so I struggle in this scenario because I think it's one of the things that has held me from the church, because in the messed up version of Catholicism, I also can't be anything else. So I have dabbled with taking the girls to like a Lutheran Episcopalian church, and we talked about that. But I feel like I'm cheating on Catholicism because that's what Catholicism builds. But it really makes it hard for me that when I want to donate, I specifically steer clear of the church when I do it and try and direct my money to where I think it can be most impactful. And that's actually something I picked up not by chance. It was from Ford. Ford said, like, I like to direct my money where I know where it's going and I believe it's going to be impactful in my community. And it struck me when he said it years ago. I was like, that makes sense. Like, in other words, to give it to some thing that I don't know what it is, that I don't 100% agree with what they're probably doing with it, and I'm uncomfortable, doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And especially because you told me I had to. But what does make sense is if I see something and I say, like, they need help, and so I want to help them. And so then I, that makes me feel better about doing it, right? Because otherwise you end up, I think there's two versions of that fretful giver. One is that you're just pleased with yourself, like, the people that go to, the church on Christmas and Easter.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Or you give money just because that's what you have to do. But there's a different side of it, I think, of some people who give to the church, but might be fretful about it because they don't really know where the money's going. Like when you make a donation to somewhere and it's just some big organization, you know what I mean? Like even in an odd tie, it reminds me of the thing in North Carolina with all the storms. And, we had the opportunity, everybody had the opportunity to give money. And Ford said to me, hey, reach out to people we know there and see what we can do directly. If they need help, we will help. Right. But like, we wanted to do it in a very direct fashion.
Right. Yeah.
Because that way it gets to the people who need it. And
I totally agree. And that's not to say it's not to say the Red Cross is doing bad work.
No.
But writing a check to Red Cross feels at times unimpactful because Red Cross is a big organization. They've got their own set of overhead and all those things that they've got to make sure they cover, and they do good work. I truly believe that. But when you can, like you're saying, like Ford likes to do, go to the source because you know that you've got the time or the talent, or in our case, we maybe even some of the resources, equipment, et cetera, the people, like we can say, all right, we'll do those things at cost to Berg, but not at gain to Berg in that way. And that's, I think, like I see the difference, and I think it's potentially more impactful.
It's funny to me that Ford's so quiet on this one.
Well, it's actually my dad and I were having this conversation the other day because he actually says about it in the book too, about like, it's this weird thing because like when you're giving, you're releasing something, right? I mean, that's like what really giving is. It's a release of something from you to someone else, family, whatever it is. And so on one side, you're like supposed to just release it and be what it is. Mm-hmm. But there's that other side where there has to be accountability. There has to be that they're actually doing what they are saying. There has to be, some of those factors. And so, especially I think if you're giving of financial resources, there is a big thing to make sure that it's going to actually do for the cause that it's actually going for. Yeah. And it's such a challenging thing because, it's like, oh, just give to this place. It's like, well, but what are they actually doing? What's their, they have people they have to pay. People have actual jobs that, a nonprofit does not mean that everybody is volunteers. It means that there is, overhead. There is things that has to be covered. I mean, I think that's a huge thing that like people think nonprofits, the assumption is people think that nonprofits survive on air, right? I mean, like this general, like when you say nonprofit, people just also like being like, no, they are a business. The nonprofit is literally just a classification in the tax code.
It's tax purposes.
Sure. Yeah.
They don't have, the good saying is no margin, no mission. Like if they aren't bringing in more than what they're spending, they can't help the people that they're trying to help.
Right.
But there's also ways where sometimes that gets a little out of whack. And so I don't think it's like you can go in and make demands like I'll drop this check if you do this. But at the same time, if you see something that doesn't fit within your parameters of what you think should be done, you can choose to do something else with it. I mean, I think that's where this ties a little bit to the business because the benefit of growing the business and having profits and stuff is that we're able to help with things from the business perspective because, if you have extra resources, you can give them to places. Yeah. But there's a lot of stuff we've been able to do that cost us money per se, cost us time, but didn't actually cost us like, it's just our equipment goes out for a couple of days and helps something or like things of that. Like we already have that expertise so we can help assist in a way versus like just writing a check and walking away. And I think it also helps with like that disconnect because, I mean, anybody can sign their name on a piece of paper that has, $10 to whatever on it. But if you actually like do something for it, it seems to have a little bit better feel. Because I mean, like, if you think about it, people can actually get paid to volunteer. Like, I mean, if they work at companies that maybe do certain things, like there's ways of, where you're helping, but maybe it's not affecting your pocketbook.
The reality is when you give, especially financially, there is a potential tax benefit.
Right.
You know what I mean? In that gift, if you are so inclined and in a position where you could take advantage of that from a tax purposes.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not, even then, it could give back. Of all if we get really granular, of the things that we do, what do you think is the most impactful to you as like the leader of Berg, right? The one that started it from a shovel. Is it Good Sam, or is it Anchored, or is it when we do a baseball field? Like, does one of those things feel more impactful, or do you see them all sort of the same? Like, how does that, I wonder this sometimes, like, what does it feel like to be in a position where you're able to help in so many different ways, in sometimes writing a check, in sometimes actively having a family member or someone involved in the organization and having oversight, or actively being involved, but also just saying, I'm going to utilize my company to do this work. And I'm just going to eat it because I can. Like, where do you think is the most impactful to you as a person?
I definitely think that the work, right? I mean, because like, I've even been on boards and it just doesn't have the impact that I think, when we can go out and do a project, or, years ago, there was someone like trees blew down, we're able to like get them out of their house. Like, using your expertise is like a double value, right? I mean, it's not, but it's like, okay, like there might not have been someone else that could have done this. So like, because of the equipment that we have and the team members that can do this, we can actually use our resources for the community. It's, and usually that's not for a religious cause. That's usually not but it's just a community-based thing.
Well, and so the funny thing about that answer, when you answer that way, is first, I think it so directly ties to the actual core of all these religions, right? Is that's it. It's that you're like giving of yourself, like being a community member and everything else. But the other thing is, I think how impactful it is to the group, because it is so direct that you're helping, and you're helping in a way that nothing else really helps. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't, you know what I mean? And I sort of simply relate it to like the barn idea. Like, when the barn burns down, it doesn't help to give someone the money. It helps to rebuild their barn. Like, either way, the barn gets rebuilt, but it is very different. The communal benefit of a group like going in there and making whole what was damaged, you know? And I think that's sort of the value in that, is the intrinsic value is amazing. And the ability to do it is, you feel fortunate. We've done a couple things where Ford, sort of directed us to go help, and it feels amazing, right? It feels like it was impactful. Like, you see what you did, and you also, you're in touch with the community to know how fortunate you are. Like, in a almost like in a tax benefit way. Like, it's so odd because you realize your own station in life. Like, you realize that you are in a position where you're able to provide this or do that, or, personally for yourself, it makes you be more in touch with the reality of your own situation.
Yeah. I had two things I kind of thought about while both of you were talking there. The one was in regards to like the doing the work. And I thought, I think it is like, it can be more impactful to the giver and the receiver in certain ways, because a lot like construction, like there's like the visible gratification of like seeing a job well done and the value of what it adds to the person that's receiving the work, the value, etc. And so I thought that was interesting growing up as a contractor or in the construction world, that like that's how your brain's wired, right? Like I think in some ways, you Ford, having grown up in this environment, living this environment, day in and day out, that is telling of why you value the trades so much. I think because I don't see a ton of difference personally between, in some ways, giving of the talent and giving of the time. I think it's just like a slower, potentially like a maturation of the result, right? So like a lot of times my work on the board feels like it takes a long time to get to the result, a lot of hours, and it's not as like instantly visible as helping someone rebuild their home or helping them paint their walls and stuff like that. And so I just thought that was maybe just two different like perspectives of us growing up in different paths and arriving at similar places.
The other thing, as Ford was talking, that I thought about was how core it is to our core values.
Yeah.
In other words, like part of it is that's, we want to do things that are impactful to the community, like as our business.
Right.
Like we don't want to just go do the same thing repetitively over and over again necessarily. We like to, when possible, find jobs that we think are impactful to the community, that are beneficial to the greater good.
Sure.
And, so even in our work, in a sense, we want it to be meaningful.
Yeah. The other thing I was thinking about, and I don't know if either of you, if your kids are old enough yet to have done this, but it's funny to me, like, to reflect on things like this, because usually as a parent, you think about your job, your role in impacting and guiding your kids, right? But I can think of a couple of like pretty specific examples of how like my kids have impacted me. And one of them is in this exact way, actually. When Gavin was young, every time we passed somebody who was homeless, he said, "Dad, can you give him some money?" Every time. And I was like, "Well, Gav, I don't know if they need it. I don't know if that guy's actually homeless. I don't know what he's going to use it for." And he's like, "You don't have to decide. He needs it. We have it. Could you just give it to him?" And he would go as far. And it's funny. He's probably like 10 years old, right? And he'd be like, "Dad, I'll give you the money back." Which,
I'll reimburse you.
Yeah, makes me a little emotional.
Yeah.
And so, like, to try and find sort of, and so we did that for a long time. And Allie would actually carry bags in her car to like
a little hand, like a go bag type scenario,
food, water, or whatever. So, but what's actually helped me in that is like, I don't know how they'll use it all the time, but if I truly believe they need it, I'll give. And but the other thing is, it started to make me think, and I got this from you, Ford. Started to make me think though, like, how do I be involved in changing that in my community? Instead of like, not that there aren't an abundance of needs in every community, but if I can be of impact, can I like focus on my community and impact locally? And so for me, like trying to find ways to like donate or be involved into organizations like Good Samaritan, which is one you introduced me to, like, which has a direct impact on homelessness and the homeless population in our community here. Like, that's for me, I'm like, okay, like that's a way, like Gavin has said, like, let's do it. And I'm like, all right, let's do it. And let's help people here. Right. And so, yeah.
Well, and that's the great part about that, because, our daughters are starting to say stuff where they're like, we're pulling up to a light, and that's a place I have my issues with, but neither here nor there.
Sure.
But, where like, they're like, why don't we? And like, it's like, whatever. But like going at it from the other angle with Good Sam, because they're actually helping those people, and you're knowing that they're helping them, giving the things that they need, and it wouldn't be going to something that wouldn't. And that's what you're saying about we were just talking about that, like, you're giving that money, whatever, 5, 10, 20, whatever it is. I mean, the food is a greater, thing, because then it's not being used for something that would harm that person. But you're just letting it go and you're like, hey, I did my part, and like I can't control what that person is going to do with that.
Yeah.
And so that's always an interesting dynamic to figure out how that works. And that's like, you're good at boards because you are that longer term thing. I've removed myself from that situation because I like to get things done. Like it's just, I can't do this 18 months talking about things until they move forward.
Sure.
And I just realized that that's not my DNA. And so I just realized that I can't, that's not a way in which I can be useful or helpful.
Yeah.
So I will find other avenues because that particular one just, I've tried it and it is not for me.
Yeah, there's so much there in what you just said. I mean, first, just the idea of, I don't remember what the exact wording, but we're like, he needs it and you have it, or you have extra and don't need it. I mean, from a like a child's perspective, it's just, it is hard to get there as an adult, like having, lived this long, like just to some degree I become, jaded and I'm evaluating. Like I pull up to the light. I'm just like frustrated. You know what I mean? Like I don't know how, like I don't have any of the information I need to really be able to make a fair judgment. And it's not my job to judge.
Right.
But but you are where you are. I am where I am in behaving that way. But just the pure sense of that to say like, am I impacted, even if you don't take it to the length of impacting you? Like, Gavin sort of simplified it. Are you impacted in any way if you give that person $1? Like, no, like you're not. So give the guy $1. Like, cause it's the right thing to do. So that was the first thing that came to mind. But in a crazy example of something similar to that I remember that I have watched Ford give away a lot. And I don't think anything was as striking to me as the time you were with us, I believe, and we were at a really nice restaurant, and I think we were in Charlotte for meetings, and Ford had steak. We all had steak, and Ford got steak. He didn't eat it all, and he got a box to take it with him. It was the oddest thing because
we're staying in a hotel.
And when we used to have time, Ford and I would we would go out, and when we didn't all have kids and Ford wouldn't really take food with him if he was going home because he'd be like, nah, we're going to like leave the restaurant, go to this other place, go to another place. And then we got to drive back to your house. And I'm going to drive back to my house.
It's going to leak in the car.
It's going to leak in the car. I'm not taking this with me. And I saw him and he took and I was like, what is he doing? He has no way to maintain or heat that up. It's going to be bad. We know we're having breakfast tomorrow. Like there's no reason to carry walk. And it was so odd. And he like walked out and we walked around the corner and there was a homeless guy who had been sitting there that we walked by to walk into, who knows the last time he ate, and we were walking in to spend a lot of money per meal. And Ford handed him the steak. And I was like, what? Did you know he was there? And he was like, yeah, I saw him when I walked in. And I was like, so you thought about it while you were eating, and then you saved it, and then you gave it to him. And he was like, yeah. And I was like, I don't know why it was so striking to me, but it was because it didn't cost Ford anything. It was going to cost him the same if he ate it, didn't eat it, threw it away. It didn't matter, right? It didn't change anything. It didn't impact Ford at all.
Sure.
But the cognizance to have seen the person, but not say like, hey, here's $5, but then get a meal and give him a meal that, you know what I mean? Like it was, It was just so striking to me. And it was like spoke to who he is, that I always say like, if I said, Ford, will you give me $5? He probably would. But if I said, Ford, can I borrow your car or your Traco? Can I stay at your house? It would definitely be yes. You know what I mean? Like, in other words, it's just so intentional about how he is that he wants to help, but help isn't always money. He wants to help in the most impactful way, I think. And for that way, he's a really good role model for me as I try and figure out how I try and meet the intention of this chapter and what it means in life to really be able to give.
Yeah. It's I think a tough one to like maybe at times mentally get yourself to, and I'm sure like each of us would say the same. Like at different points in our life, we may have thought about it or approached it differently, but somewhere along the lines we've figured out, or people have impacted us in a way that made us start to think about this in a little bit different manner. And I think this chapter of the book really sort of just helps like reinforce the mindset. So, yeah. that's probably a good place to wrap it up. Folks, I hope you got something from this episode, and we hope you come back for another one. Thanks.